The verdict is in on the Grand Lucayan Resort deal. Police in Grand Bahama are investigating a police-involved shooting and another shooting incident, and two ministers weigh in on the CDC's travel advisory for the Bahamas. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tyler Simnet with your JCN News for this Tuesday, December 21st. The government has advised that it has effectively cancelled its agreement with RCL/ITM for the sale of the Grand Lucayan Resort. Arleia Cooper has more.
After over 2 years of back and forth negotiations on the sale of the Grand Lucayan Resort, the verdict is finally in. The agreement between the government of the Bahamas and RCL/ITM for the sale has officially been canceled. In a press statement released by the Ministry of Tourism, Investments and Aviation, it notes the government was frankly not satisfied with what was proposed or that the project would be advanced in the short or medium term, and were not willing to continue without a clear timeline for completion, and were of the view that many of the terms were not in the best interest of the Bahamian people. It goes on to say that the previous administration, via Lucayan Renewal Holdings Limited, had agreed to lend money to Bahamas Port Investments Limited to renovate and develop the property. In summary, the deal was not a win-win for the Bahamian people. Yesterday, the boards of Lucayan Renewal Holdings Limited and Lucayan Beach Casino Holdings Limited terminated by mutual consent the 2020 purchase agreement between themselves and Bahamas Port Investments Limited, a joint venture partnership between Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines and the ITM Group. The ministry says this is a major step forward as it now allows the board of Lucayan Renewal Holdings Limited to negotiate directly with other suitors. The Ministry of Tourism notes that there are several noteworthy entities that have a credible interest in the property. The ideal candidate, in the government's view, is an entity with significant resources and a clear vision for the properties that is aligned with the Ministry of Tourism's vision and the long-term strategic plan for Grand Bahama as a destination. Talks with other potential investors will start shortly, they say, and the ministry says the Bahamian people will be kept abreast of developments with the project as they occur. When asked how the cancellation of this deal will impact future dealings with the RCL/ITM group of companies, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism, Investments and Aviation, Chester Cooper, says the marriage between the government of the Bahamas and RCL/ITM is a good one.
RCL remains a partner in the Bahamas. They've been operating out of the Bahamas for 25 years. They are still committed to a new port in Freeport. They're still committed as a 40% shareholder in the shipyard in Freeport. And they are committed to supporting the tourism industry and infrastructure in Grand Bahama. So we are happy to say that whilst we terminate by consent this agreement, we have made public commentary in relation to the deal in opposition. We have reaffirmed those positions in government. We are tasked now to do something about it, and we have taken the decision to terminate the agreement with the mutual consent of the parties.
The Deputy Prime Minister also added that the government has their eye on a few potential buyers with both the means and the vision for the future development of Grand Bahama.
We want to sell the property in the shortest possible time frame. We are committed to doing a deal expeditiously. We have at least 6 very credible potential investors for the property. We consider the ideal candidate a company, an entity with experience, with significant resources, and with a vision for the property and commitment to be a part of the shared vision for development of Grand Bahama Island as a destination and one of the key islands destinations of the Bahamas.
Mr. Cooper also notes that the government, having already expended an excess of $150 million on the maintenance of the Grand Lucayan Resort, he hopes to recover its investment moving forward. Reporting for JCN News, I'm Leah Cooper.
Police in Grand Bahama today are reporting a police-involved shooting where they say a man wanted for murder was rendered lifeless after pointing a firearm at officers. Here's Police Press Liaison Officer for Grand Bahama and the Northern Bahamas Assistant Superintendent of Police, Stephen Roll, with the details.
Shortly after 7 o'clock this morning, the police control room received a report of a police-involved shooting in the Hunters, Grand Bahama area. Officers, upon their arrival, the initial investigation report is that the officers were conducting a search for a wanted person who was wanted for murder on the latest shooting last evening. The police also would have issued wanted posters for this man for murder. The officers, while making a check of a witness structure in the Hunters area, they would have saw the male emerge from that residence. Upon seeing the officers, produced a firearm, pointed in the officer's direction, and they became a fear for their lives, withdrew their service pistols, and discharged several rounds in his direction, facing wounding him.
Not long after, EMS arrived on the scene and found no signs of life, and the man was pronounced dead. ASP Roll added that while this matter is still under active investigation, the deceased was known to police and is suspected to be connected to several shootings in the Grand Bahama area, including the fatal shooting of a juvenile that took place in Pinders Point on December 3rd. Police say that a firearm loaded with an unknown quantity of ammunition was recovered from scene, and investigations are ongoing. Furloughed Atlantis employees will receive the government's $500 unemployment benefit as promised in its supplementary budget. This coming from Minister with responsibility for the National Insurance Board, Miles Larota, on Tuesday ahead of the weekly cabinet meeting.
We think that it affects around 400 to 450 people, and so they will receive their funds no later than 12 o'clock on Friday. The process approval has already been sent to the National Insurance Board, and the process already have begun to ensure that those affected individuals receive their funds before Christmas.
He says the decision was made in consultation with individuals at the National Insurance Board and follows many calls from affected workers.
And a lot of these individuals have not been working from last year, so some of them have been without work for the past year and a half. They have been disengaged, and so while they were paid their severances, the National Insurance Board would have cut them off, because once you were paying your contributions, you were seen to be working. They just got their notices, which meant that the National Insurance Board were paying them for those weeks in advance, and so they fell outside the law. But the reality on the ground was these individuals have not been working for the past year and a half, that they were paid. If you were line staff, you would have gotten 6 months worth of salary, and a lot of that was just eaten up either by banks.
That said, Minister Larota says the government made a decision, considering the circumstances, to give these workers a good Christmas. The Bahamas gets an early Christmas gift from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, downgrading the country's travel risk advisory. The Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Health and Wellness weighing in on this. With more, we go to our Laurencia Smith.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness advised the public that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has lowered the COVID-19 travel risk advisory rating for the Bahamas from a level 3, which is high, down to a level 2, which is moderate. According to the CDC, a level 2 rating advising international travelers to be fully vaccinated before coming to the Bahamas. It also advised that unvaccinated travelers who are at risk for severe illness from COVID-19 should avoid non-essential travel, and if travel is necessary, they must discuss any concerns with a doctor. This is good news according to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister of Tourism, Investment and Aviation, Chester Cooper, and Health and Wellness Minister, Dr. Michael Dovell. However, they both stressed to reporters this morning outside of Cabinet that Bahamians should not let their guards down just yet. In the same breath, however, DPM Cooper says that this downgrade allows the country to attract more visitors to our shores.
With the new variant coming, which I know is your next question, we ought not to be lulled to sleep by this improvement in our grading by the CDC. We should stay vigilant. We should follow the protocols. We should avoid large parties and large gatherings. because this, now that we have level 2, that doesn't mean that we are completely out of the woods, and that can change.
Since the onset of the pandemic, the country's CDC rating has fluctuated, and Dr. Dovell was questioned by reporters if he thinks the country can maintain this rating, considering the Omicron variant.
Well, we are concerned because the Omicron virus is roaming wild. Many countries where our tourists come from. And when we look at the state of Florida, we see the cases are going up there. We're concerned, and we are now in deep discussions to adjust some of our protocols to ensure that we are able to deal with issues at our borders.
This would mark the first time the country has been given a level 2 risk this year. DPM Cooper shares what this means for the country's tourism product.
The reality of where we are at the moment is we are able to attract even stronger numbers as a result of this change. Corporate groups, large events want to know that they are coming to a jurisdiction that's relatively safe, and this is an indication to the world that we are open for business and we have good protocols.
Both the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Health is urging Bahamians to not let their guards down as we still navigate our way through this COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Lauren Smith for JCN News.
No plans to change cruise ship protocols. That's the words of Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Michael Dovell. That decision comes following reports that 48 individuals on board Royal Caribbean Symphony of the Seas ship ended a 7-day sailing in Miami on Saturday, tested positive for COVID-19 during the cruise. Health Minister Dr. Michael Dovell did confirm with reporters that vessels stopped at Coco Key.
Well, we're familiar with that report in the Miami Herald where 48 people were diagnosed with COVID and the Omicron variant. We know that that same vessel stopped in Coco Key. When it arrived in Coco Key, there was a report that there was 23 people on board who were in isolation.
Dr. Dovell says that since coming into office, they have had opportunities to visit several of the cruise ships coming into the country, and they are pleased the COVID-19 guidelines that are currently in place are satisfactory.
They have multiple negative pressure rooms on board their vessels. They have a really strong contact surveillance techniques, and they have the physicians on board. And so we are quite pleased. Based on the regulations that we put in place with the cruise ships, we believe that they are capable to handle their cases.
Now, Dr. Dovell stresses that there are no plans at this time to shut down the country's borders. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.